The Galactic Council had made their decision with the cold certainty of mathematics. Humanity would be eliminated. For 3,000 years, the Council had maintained perfect order across 17 star systems. The Zephyrians provided technological advancement through their crystalline minds. The Korvaxi ensured economic stability with their hive-like efficiency. The ethereal Luminari served as mediators, their telepathic abilities resolving conflicts before they could escalate. Each species had found their place in the cosmic hierarchy. Then came the humans. Ambassador Krelthak of the Zephyrian Collective studied the holographic display floating before the assembled council. The data was undeniable. In the mere 2 centuries since first contact, humanity had disrupted every carefully maintained balance. They refused to accept designated roles, insisted on exploring restricted sectors, and worst of all, they inspired others to question the established order. "The solution is clear," Krelthak announced, his crystalline form refracting the chamber's light into prismatic patterns. "The human anomaly must be corrected through systematic elimination. Our combined fleets will glass Earth before their influence spreads further." The vote was unanimous. Within hours, the largest armada in galactic history began its journey toward the small blue world at the edge of the Milky Way's spiral arm. Admiral Sarah Chen received the intelligence report while reviewing defensive positions around Mars. The numbers were staggering. Over 10,000 ships representing 7 different species, all converging on Earth's solar system. Humanity's total fleet numbered barely 300 vessels, most of them converted cargo haulers pressed into military service. "Ma'am," her aide Lieutenant Morrison said quietly, "the Pentagon is requesting immediate evacuation protocols for essential personnel." Chen stared at the tactical display, watching the red markers creep steadily closer to home. Her grandfather had been a military historian, and she remembered his stories about impossible odds and desperate stands. He'd taught her about Thermopylae, about the Alamo, about Stalingrad. He'd also taught her about something else, something the galaxy had never encountered before. "Belay those evacuation orders, Lieutenant." Chen's voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. "Signal all ships to form defensive positions around Earth, and Lieutenant—" "Yes, ma'am." "Wake up the drummers." The first galactic fleet ships dropped out of hyperspace expecting to find a scattered, panicking enemy. Instead, they found something that made no tactical sense. Every human vessel had formed a perfect sphere around their homeworld, with the smallest fighters on the outside and the largest ships protecting the planet itself. It was a formation designed for sacrifice, not victory. But it was the sound that truly confused them. From every human ship, across all communication frequencies, came a rhythmic pounding that seemed to bypass their auditory systems and strike directly at something primal within their consciousness. The Zephyrians' crystalline minds began to resonate uncomfortably. The Korvaxi hive link experienced strange fluctuations. Even the telepathic Luminari felt their mental harmony disrupted by the relentless beat. "What is this noise?" demanded Fleet Commander Vexhai from his flagship's bridge. The answer came not from his crew, but from an open-channel transmission originating from the largest human vessel, a woman's voice calm and steady despite the impossible odds facing her species. "Commander, I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. What you're hearing are our war drums. Every human culture has them. Different instruments, different rhythms, but the same purpose. They remind us who we are when everything else falls away." The drumming intensified, and now it was joined by other sounds. Human voices, raised not in panic but in defiance. Ancient war cries in 100 different languages. The battle hymns of soldiers who had faced hopeless odds since their species first learned to stand upright. "Your people seem to misunderstand their situation," Vexhai replied. "You are vastly outnumbered. Surrender now and we will make your extinction swift." Chen's laughter echoed across the void. "Commander, you've studied our tactical capabilities, our technology, our numbers. But you've made one critical error. You've never studied our history. The first wave of galactic ships opened fire, expecting to sweep aside the human defenders like leaves before a storm. Instead, they encountered something unprecedented in 3 millennia of organized warfare. The humans didn't retreat. They didn't break formation. They didn't even try to run. They fought. Every human ship that fell took at least 3 enemy vessels with it, crews ramming their damaged hulls into galactic battleships rather than accept defeat. Fighter pilots with failing life support systems used their ships as guided missiles. Marines boarded enemy vessels in makeshift spacesuits, carrying nothing but primitive kinetic weapons and an absolute refusal to surrender. But it was more than just their tactics that unnerved the galactic forces. It was the way they died. Other species, when faced with inevitable destruction, would accept their fate with resignation or plead for mercy. Humans sang. They shouted defiance at the void. They died with their ancestors' names on their lips and fury in their hearts. The drumming never stopped. Hours passed, then days. The Galactic Armada, designed to achieve overwhelming victory in mere minutes, found itself locked in the most brutal conflict any of them had ever witnessed. Worse, the constant sound of those drums seemed to be affecting their crews in ways their commanders hadn't anticipated. The Korvaxi hive mind began experiencing something unprecedented, individual thoughts breaking away from the collective, inspired by the humans' impossible defiance. Zephyrian crystal minds, accustomed to cold logic, found themselves struggling with unfamiliar emotions. The Luminari discovered that their telepathic harmony was being replaced by something rawer, more primal. On the 7th day of battle, with Earth's orbital defenses finally falling and human resistance reduced to scattered survivors, something impossible happened. A Korvaxi ship broke formation and turned its weapons on its former allies. Then another. Within hours, 3 different species had ships in open rebellion against their own fleets. The drums had awakened something that the Galactic Council had spent millennia trying to suppress: the individual will to choose one's own fate, regardless of the consequences. Fleet Commander Vexhai found himself facing not just human resistance, but revolution within his own ranks. His perfect, orderly galaxy was crumbling to the sound of primitive percussion instruments and the war cries of a species that refused to accept defeat. That's when Admiral Chen's voice filled the communication channels one final time. "Commander, you came here to eliminate what you saw as a threat to your order, but you misunderstood what we represent. We're not just another species, we're an idea. The idea that any being, no matter how small or how outnumbered, has the right to stand up and say no to those who would rule them." She paused, and in that silence the drums seemed to grow louder, joined now by percussion instruments from a dozen different worlds as the rebellion spread. "Your people have 3 choices, Commander. You can continue this war and watch your perfect galaxy tear itself apart. You can retreat and hope the fire we've lit burns itself out before it reaches your homeworlds, or what?" Vexhai whispered. "Or you can learn to hear the music in those drums instead of just the noise. Your choice." The formal surrender was signed aboard Chen's flagship 3 days later, not just by the invasion fleet, but by representatives of every species in the Galactic Council. The document was unprecedented in its scope: complete governmental restructuring, individual rights charters, and the dissolution of the rigid caste system that had defined galactic civilization. But perhaps most importantly, it included a single line that would echo through history: "The sound of Earth's war drums shall serve as a permanent reminder that freedom is not given. It is taken by those brave enough to reach for it." The galaxy had learned what humanity had always known. Sometimes the greatest victory comes not from conquest, but from inspiring others to find the warrior within themselves. The drums finally fell silent, but their echo would resonate across the stars forever.